I would like to thank the three of you to be part of this presentation. And I know that DGNB is important for you as a professional to use it. Please transmit it to the rest of the people over here listening. Thanks.
Okay. First of all, thanks, Bruno. And thanks for your patience in this. I try to show my presentation and hopefully that works. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
You see the first slide.
Yeah.
So first, hello to everybody. We're an architectural firm. I am in person also part of this DGNB system from the very beginning, from the scratch. I'm part of the board. And I want to show you on an example on a recently finished building how DGNB could support us in developing hopefully better architecture for a better future. What the impact of these criteria might be in an architectural development. Before doing so, I want to show you in what way we approach architecture. I believe very much in an approach where simplicity, so first building only what is needed, is upfront the biggest criteria. So I believe that we are still living in a world where in Germany, especially 85% of a year, you don't need to have any warming or cooling in general. So when you address a structure of architecture in this passive manner to build only appropriate to the microclimate, what is needed to allow for daylight access, to have simple materials, to reduce the impact of embedded energy by using as much as possible renewable, recyclable materials, you have a first good start. And only for the last percentage of days in a year where the comfort of a passive structure doesn't work anymore, and where you need to add technology, where you need to add cooling or heating, then do that with high tech, but do it as an additive element. Don't embed that. Don't do that in raised ceilings, raised floors. Do that visible, because the technology will stuff out the building with is in the day of inauguration already outdated. You have to acknowledge that technology development is so rapidly moving that it makes sense to allow for future generations to unwrap, refurbish a building must be as easy as possible. Simple structure, technology as an add-on element. And that was very much what we did here for a company in Germany, an organic food company. We built a new headquarters, 10,000 square meters of office structure in the city of Darmstadt. And when we started and when we located the site, we searched with the client together potential sites. We came in with a clear agenda of using as much as possible what we find on site. The regional approach to reduce the impact of driving, of transport for the goods is, in my understanding, also a very good criteria to reduce the resources. So the site itself, it's a former military camp, and we were close to the city center, so we had a very good mobility connection, a public transport connection to the city. Close by there was this forest, and the forest is a perfect source of air, of fresh air. In the forest you have 5 degrees less in the summer, so we can use the evaporation cooling system of the trees for ventilation. And we also reused the pavement structures of this former military parking lots, recycled everything and reused it in the building. So we started with labeling what are our aims and our criteria in the architectural meaning. And when it comes to architecture, we talk about the space, so reduce the amount of footprint of the building, open up as much as possible, allowing the microclimate to interact with the building, not sealing too much in order to get rid of heat island effects. We thought that we have to check very carefully the life cycle of the materials we will use. We want to have an optimized building envelope, and a reduced consumption of materials, build only what is really needed. So we talked very eagerly with the client to shrink the amount of separation walls and everything which you usually stuff in a building to a minimum. And as I said, employment of natural and renewable building materials. When we start that, we usually start by having a carefully analysis of the potential of the site. So we look on the solar hours, the impact of geothermal possibilities, possible synergies between different functions. So we checked carefully what the Supernaturmarkt could gain in terms of heat loads they use for the refrigerators we can reuse in the office. And then we located the building clearly north-south in order to have a clear north-orientated facade, which is the optimized daylight source without any solar gains. As I said, we used the close-by forest as a fresh air source. We had an earth duct where we suck in the fresh air, and we used the chimney effect of this atrium in order to have a natural ventilation flow in the building. We raised the ceiling heights in order to allow maximum daylight hits in the center of the building to have a daylight optimized building structure. And this gives you a bit of an understanding. We used geothermal for potential heating devices, etc. So it was a very high sophisticated general approach of sustainability. And we, as an architect, I believe we have a lot of knowledge in this field. We have also partners. We worked with Transolar. We had structural engineers who were also aware about the situation, about reduction of material resources and stuff like that. But also the DGNB criteria was a very crucial part in that, because it was this objective criteria. When you talk with a client about potential impacts of materials, and you always, as an architect, you have a direct contact with a client, and it gives you a much better position if a source like the DGNB criteria list is an objective measurement, is a transparent measurement that what you do is giving a better result. And that this objective criteria list is also a very important kind of a list setting, which gives you a guidance and a guideline throughout the building process. Everybody, I believe we have lots of architects in this lecture, in this webinar. So you know about the difficulties, the discussion about costs, about timing and stuff like that. And then the criteria list of the DGNB gives you very perfect guidance what else needs to be addressed beside the big picture elements of architecture and sustainability. It's also the small elements which makes a difference. And therefore, we were very happy that the DGNB were part of this development and helped us to steer the process with the client. It was, as I said, an important supporter in the final result. We had this crucial idea to simplify and to get rid of layers in architecture. The left image shows you a typical section of an office building with all these extra layers. You have a raised floor, you have a raised ceiling. And when you summarize that on various levels, for 5 or 6 levels, you build a complete level only for technical implementations. It doesn't give any room to the people, to the users. So it makes sense, and to reduce the costs of these buildings, to simplify the layer structure and to work in a more direct manner. What is there is what the people can see. And as I said, when you need lights, we put it on underneath the ceiling, we put it on the floor, we don't put it in a raised ceiling. And we also had the target to reduce the layer structure of the wall. Because when you address this crucial passive approach to architecture, you also have a bit of an assurance that in the long-term perspective, the structure is still in use because it's not related to technical solutions. What we did then, we did together with the University in Munich, life cycle analysis of various materials, because at the beginning, we also only had the structure in mind. We knew how the building should be shaped, but we didn't have the final decision made what kind of materials we want to use. So with this typical PCR phases analysis, we could allow to check the embedded energy, the performance energy of various materials. We did a kind of a section throughout the building, checked the impact when it comes to the carbon footprint of various materials options. And finally, we ended with rammed earth as a very good potential facade cladding material. I'm not a rammed earth expert. I wasn't at the beginning. Now I know a bit better, and we will reuse the material further on. But when it came up to rammed earth as a potential material, we teamed up with Martín Haas, who's an expert in that field, and we tested over a long period how this wall could be engineered with an embedded geothermal heating and cooling device, because we realized with this simple structure that it works brilliantly for 80% of the year, but in winter it cools too easily out, and in summer we need to have a bit of a cooling. So then we said, let's install in that rammed earth a water piping system which is connected to a heat pump, and the heat pump is connected to a geothermal resource to have an radiant heating and cooling device in that rammed earth. It was a development, took us almost half a year, because the material is not listed in Germany. We had to do a lot of testing. We also invented a new facade insulation material, recycled glass gravel, which we rammed in that wall as the insulation layer. So finally it came up with this rammed earth block, 3 meter by 1 meter in height, 70 centimeter thick. And we had this massive wall produced on site and then tried out for 3 months, and then finally installed on site to the building. The roof is out of wood. We were not, let's say, you see the ceiling is in the inside, it's still in concrete. We had a lot of debates, shall we produce the ceilings in wood or not? And we finally came up with concrete as a good solution, because we wanted to use the geothermal mass of the materials for further balancing the heat and cooling loads in the building. So I'm going very quickly, since we consumed so much time this morning, over the interior look. The good thing with this natural materials is also what we as architects have to acknowledge, that it gives back an emotional link to the users. The people appreciate it, the very nice atmosphere, the comfortable air quality is what the rammed earth is doing. It's drying out the air. It's a very perfect balancing material for hydrophobic situations in the building. It gives the building this, yes, we want to live in that. We want to stay, we want to work here. This is a healthy environment. And I think that is probably the biggest success you can do as an architect, that people appreciate the places you generated. And even if it is a working space, it is very much appreciated by the client and its users as a perfect situation for working and interaction. And you see in the inside, it's completely based. It's one big room. We thrown out everything which is not needed. So the separation is made with the furniture. It's 10,000 square meter of one natural ventilated, natural daylight enlightened office space. Lastly, I want to show you the lists, the criteria lists from the DGNB, how important that was as a guidance to come into the smaller elements of sustainability. When it comes to gluing materials, when it comes to insulation materials, layering options, DGNB helps you to find the perfect materials. That was the Innenraumluftmessung. Sorry, I'm not having the English term for that. So we checked the quality of air inside the VOC, the volatile organic components. And you can see the green bars indicates you how the good quality of the air is working inside. And this kind of criteria, this kind of transparent lists shows also the client that all the effort of the planning and the extra effort of rethinking a lot of things made a lot of sense. So that is only a bit of guidance which the DGNB gives you easily. And at the very end, I believe that you as an architect, or we as an architect, we as an architectural society, we have to acknowledge that the transparent performance of the building needs to be proved after the building is completed. Quite often it happens, you have a perfect plan, you know what to do, but a very sustainable building needs to be interacted with. People have to know when they have to close the shading devices, when they have to open windows, when you come to a natural ventilated building. And therefore we did a lot of monitoring in the building. That first part shows you the temperature wings, summer and winter, and it shows you the gray bar is the comfortable bar for the people inside. It shows you how good it works, but the impacts where the blue line exceeds the gray bar shows you also that at this particular day, the people didn't shut the shading system, so they didn't use the building accordingly or proper. And therefore the monitoring is a very good element to steer and help a client to give the building the performance how it was planned at the very beginning. So since we used so much time, that is also something where the DGNB system, our partners, the planning, showed the potential of this innovation approach in architecture, that local production of materials is very important, that the energy consumption for transportation is a big thing. And this diagram and this bar shows you a bit that even if we used rammed earth, the carbon footprint of this rammed earth facade was still not quite good, because we had 170 kilometers to bring in the rammed earth, since there was a sand soil on the very site, and we didn't find the appropriate earth particular in Darmstadt. So transportation, that was a very important outcome of the research and of the monitoring system, is a big effort when it comes to carbon neutral buildings. Hope you understand that I was a bit rapidly going through the presentation since we had this 20-minute lot. Finally, to summarize, even as an architect who thinks, we quite often think we have the solutions ahead, it is very, very important to have a system like the DGNB as a perfect partner for the guidance, steering through the process to finally come up with a solution which is really sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin. It's always a pleasure listening to this presentation of your building. It's not the first time, so in that sense, you always discover new parts. I really like the fact that you insist so much that DGNB system is a partner in the process. That is not something that you have to use at the end just to get the certification. It is not something that is imposing you, that is really obliging you to do certain things. It's just something that you take by the hand from the beginning, and that you find it as a really useful tool to improve your architecture. It's not a limitation, it's something that is enriching. I think that's a very important message to give to many, many architects who are still maybe doubting or having certain kind of resistance towards sustainability. So again, I'm not going to take more time from you. I know you're busy, that you have quite a lot of work. Thank you very much for sharing these moments with us. And sorry again, I apologize again for the delay. We keep in contact and we see each other in one of these international
All
networks.
the best to you.
Thank you.
Have a healthy
Bye.
Christmas and enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks.